Okay, so just a few things about ink pen to kind of just make you feel good about it. One of the things you'll notice that whenever you make an ink pen drawing and you put a lot of work into it, is that it really becomes it's a very impressive piece of art because it looks like it has a lot of detail, but actually a lot of that detail might be just kind of doodling on your behalf. They say that it actually makes you smarter and sharper to do a lot of ink drawings because there's kind of no room for really fixing things. So you just kind of have to very strategically place your lines. So it does make you very aware of what you're doing. I personally think they're great practice. I like that it's something you can do anywhere and you can really do it small and have a lot of impact. So the very first thing I want to tell you is that if you want to cover some ground today is kind of start it small so that because you have a very fine tip, so you are able to work on it small and still get a lot of nice detail in there. To finish up a large ink pen drawing, it takes a lot of time. So that's the first thing is size. I'm sure by now you have kind of, figured out what pens you like to use. Again, there's so many. I would really just look at the tip and see that it's a tip that you like and try it and make sure that it's the right size. It's a good idea to have more than one because you will have areas, and you saw in our turtle that there's some areas that are really dark and have almost like a block of ink in them. So if you want to do it with pen, you probably want a little bit of a thicker tip to it. And the third thing is a lot of the way you put the strokes and get the work done is about your grip. So you will notice that with different grips on your pen, you're going to get different marks. So when you're trying to just sketch it out, almost hold it to the side where you're not getting a direct strong line. So the more horizontal the pen is, you're gonna get a stronger print. If you're holding it a little bit to the side, it's only getting the side of the pen. So you're gonna get more broken up lines. Those are great for starting, and they're also great for when you don't want to put very strong lines. Also, feel free to start it with pencil. That is perfectly fine with an ink drawing because there is no going back. You can add and you can layer, but you cannot remove that ink line that you put down. So it's a one and go. So be mindful with your lines. I chose this turtle today because I thought it had a playful element to it. And, you can do some really kind of, whimsical lines. You can really play around with the textures a lot, but it does have some of the classic directional lines where they follow the contour, they follow the curve, and they will help with the shape. So this is going to be a really fun piece. Starting it off is really quite simple. It's going to be a bunch of ovals, and I will show you in a minute. Let me see if we got anybody else joining. Okay, we do not. Okay, so we're going to go to our picture over here. Okay, so I have one over here that I started working on, and you can see that I took a lot of liberties of just really playing around with the elements. I mean, again, it's a fantasy piece. I don't think there's any sea turtle that is that beautifully carrying all these sea creatures and plants and urchins and things on it. So I thought I would just be a little bit more kind of playful with it and kind of go past the subject. The shapes are going to be kind of all ovals, and I'll show you in a minute how I started it. And we do have some really dark areas. So for these dark areas, there's a few things you can do. You could go with something like a thick Sharpie to put in those lines, or you could use your regular pen and just go into those areas and deepen it until it gets to the darkness that you want it to be. Or you could actually use ink. So this is a jar of, just regular ink. It's nothing nothing very fancy. Now this one is blue. My black one is out, so I'm not going to put it on there. But you use it like you do watercolor, and with a thin brush, you can just put it into the places that you want. Okay, so let's go to the shape and structure. So what I did is I started with an oval, a rather large one. And what you want to do when you're first looking at it is that you want to determine the direction of this oval. So this oval is kind of, you know, sitting on the diagonal. You want to make sure that you leave enough room for the head to peek out and for the fins. Now, the one in the picture, this one over here was cut off. So I just kind of looked at this one and kind of guessed what it might look like. So I started with this big oval over here. And again, when you're starting that, you can start it with the ink pen and just with some broken up lines, and I'll show you how to do that. And then for the head and neck, I kind of put 1, 2, just to kind of just give it a little bit of softness. It does have a slight curve to it. And then I put the oval for the head. Now you want to notice that the head kind of is the furthest point on the right. So if you draw a line down, you will see that the turtle and its fins do not cross it, okay? So then I put the this fin over here. So the fins are kind of in motion, so it is going to the left. So this one is, you know, just has the slight direction of it. And this one is all the way to the back. We've got a small one over here. And then I kind of loosely bunched everything that is going on up here. And that's my other oval. So that's as far as the shapes are concerned. Again, you know, if you want to start it just off without doing the ovals, you can do some really light markings and do it that way. But I feel the shapes really, you know, really help with getting the structure down. As long as you're able to see something in the subject, whether it's a square, oval, triangle, or, you know, all different shapes at the same time, you know, that's a great start. Anything that works for you is fine by me. So back over here, it's a lot of fun doing the texturing, and you can see that, you know, it's not finished all the way through. So the breathing room in here is actually working and making it, making everything else kind of stand out. But you will see that a lot of the lines within the shapes themselves are used in a certain direction to show the shape. So for example, around the neck, you can see that the lines are going around almost in a circular motion. Almost imagine like they are wrapping around. Okay, so we are going to start. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is I am going to place kind of the big oval that we talked about. So notice I am holding my pen kind of slanted. So what happens when you use it like this is the kind of line you're going to get. See, you can barely see it. If you're holding it like this, you're going to get a much stronger line. Again, using it at a slant, you're only working part of the tip. Use it upright and you're going to get a heavier mark. So I'm going to use the side because I want to make sure that my lines are ones that I can live with if they are not exactly where I want them to be. So I'm going to do my first oval. And I have it occupying, you know, a good portion of the paper. So I just want to make sure that I have room for the head and neck and that I have room for everything else to go in. Okay, so here's the first one. Now for the neck, it kind of starts within that oval. Melissa, there's one mic that's on. It's just kind of doing some static. And then 1, 2, 3. Again, they're very loose, so they have room to change if I need to. I'm going to put in, now when you're moving from one part to the other, just try to drag your pen just to kind of see where all those other new shapes need to start. And again, I'm not defining much of the shape. I'm just placing everything so I can have all my elements. Now I'm going to put the cluster that's up here. And then this kind of juts out a little bit. And I have my fin at the end. Now I see that this one needs to be a lot longer than I did it. So I'm just going to add to it. Okay, so now I have everything that I'm going to be working with. So the next step is going to be to start shaping. So the very first thing I'm going to do, I feel that the head and the neck is the one thing that we kind of need to be mindful of and make sure that it does have some realism so you can pull off the rest. If the head, the face doesn't really look realistic, the whole thing is going to look cartoonish because we are drawing something that is, has a fantasy element to it. So I'm actually going to start right over here where the neck and that fin kind of gather together. And I'm going to use that as a starting point. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put in those ridges that I'm seeing. So what I'm doing is I am just doing just regular lines and I'm going a little bit dark. Let's see, which mic is on. Okay. Okay. All right. So I have these started. So now I'm going to use them to start shaping the neck. So I'm going to move from one side to the other very lightly. Now I'm using kind of more of this side and I'm establishing the part where the shell kind of sits on it. Okay. So see, I already have both sides. Again, I would not completely go with maximum darkness because I don't want to seal it off in case I need to move it a little bit forward or backwards. Okay, so again, I'm going to go up here and now I'm working from side to side. And you see the space over here, the space between shapes, that's called your negative space. And sometimes that is a good thing to kind of look at to determine, how far away is the head or is the chin from this fin over here. So it kind of just goes out over here. I'm going to move to the other side. And again, whenever you go to another side and you're starting on something, just go a little bit further than the actual element itself. It just helps you measure. I'm going to go back here. And then I'm starting with the head. And it has a big bump over here. It almost has almost kind of looks like a beak, but it's not a beak. Okay, so I do have most of the head. I'm just going to put down the line that defines it. Okay, so I am going to move on. I'm not going to do too much detail because I still have a lot to do. I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start kind of with this almost looks like has like a rope kind of feel to it, which is the part that is in the middle in between the shell and the top of the shell and the bottom. And it has a really nice curve to it, which is really going to help show the shape. So I'm going further down and it takes a dip over here and all the way to where it ends. Again, the only time you're going to go completely, horizontal straight onto your paper is when you're darkening and when you're doing very precise lines. When you're still sketching out, use the sides so you can get some broken up lines that are non-committal. Okay, so you can see that this band kind of has some parts of it are kind of mimicked on the top, and then it does have a slight row under it, and you can just put that down lightly. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the texture of the fins. And before I do that, I'm going to shape them a little bit more and pay attention to all those curves that I'm seeing. So notice now I'm going a little bit more with the tip because I do have a layer under it that started it off. So I kind of know that it's in the right place. And I'm going to start putting in this almost pebble texture, which I think is a lot of fun. So when you do this, make sure that you vary the size of the pebbles and have them kind of just connect to one another. You know, don't make them too uniform, otherwise they will look static. They don't have to be everywhere. Some of them can have more spaces. And again, you know, the speed that you work with, you will get faster. Okay, so I think I have those down. I'm going to work on this big fin over here. And before I start texturing, I'm going to check the shape. Just give it a little bit more definition. Make sure it's where it needs to be. Give it a little bit more contouring. See, when you go for the second time, you're going to start seeing a little bit more detail. You know, it's just normal that when our eye first looks at something, you don't see the detail. Sometimes, you know, you're sitting with someone and then you notice, you know, their new, you know, earrings or new, you know, something. So sometimes, you know, when you're first looking, you're doing a scan. And then when you look the second time, you're looking at the detail. And again, notice with this line over here, it's not a strict arched line. It does have some contours to it, some light ones. And I really love to kind of just play them up and just give them a little bit more shape to them. So again, on the left side, that pebbled texture almost has like a kind of slanted teardrop. And again, I'm going to vary the size of them. They're all kind of going in that direction. And even though, you know, I don't think like a very famous person did this sketch, but I thought that it had some really nice, simple, you know, aesthetics to it that made it work, like everything kind of going into a certain direction. I just think it's really sweet and simple. And it's something that you can make look very sophisticated. Okay, so on the other side, you can see over here, they're kind of going into that direction. You know, sometimes there's spaces between them, sometimes there's not. And, you know, as you build this, you just kind of have to kind of see what looks good and, you know, what you might need to add to it. Because also the spaces in between them is really is kind of being activated, and it frames them nicely. And again, we don't have to do them everywhere. Okay, so notice we just did the texturing without doing any without doing any detail on them, and we will get to that a little bit later so we can create some tone. Okay, so I'm going to go to the belly over here, and I am going to go a little bit higher up. And now we're able to kind of see the areas a little bit more clearly. So I have the lowest part over here. And that also has that pebbled effect, but they're larger. And notice that they're following.
You left out the small fin in between the big one and the little one on the left.
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, I will put it in. It's a simple one. Thank you. Okay. And notice that the texture is kind of going in the direction of that curve. Okay, now we can put in that little guy. doesn't have much going on for him. Okay, so I do have that. And I'm not going to do this one because you kind of know what to do. Okay, so I'm going to move. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start putting all this coral and all these fantastic elements that are in here. So notice that some of them kind of start sitting kind of lower in the shell and they go past it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put some just lines to kind of just place everything. This one over here. And, you know, this one just, you know, feel free to add, you know, whatever you want to it. Make it your own. There's some things that look like conchs over here. There's kind of a big one here that almost has like a rose type feel to it. And then we have a big one kind of, so I'm just putting, for now, I'm just putting lines so that they are placed. And there's one here that to me looks kind of like a brain. I don't know. Okay. So I am going to go to the neck and the head and start doing a little bit of detail in there. So again, whenever you're revisiting an area, make sure that you check everything as you go. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to start doing some texture. So what was used over here was just a bunch of lines that kind of wrap around the neck. So over here, I just felt that that was a little bit too narrow. So I'm going to make this a little bit wider. And from those curves, there's just some slight lines that are kind of going in. They don't continue. And then on the other side, they do the same thing. So they kind of, you know, come close, but they don't fully connect. And when you do like one line going this way, the other one over it, it's kind of giving that wrinkled effect. Okay, so I'm going to do some light texturing, and what I'm going to do here is called hatching, and hatching is where you use lines, and the closer they are together, the darker the area is going to appear. Further apart, the area looks lighter. Darker, lighter. Okay, so that's called hatching, and I'm going to use some of it. And again, it's kind of going in almost a curve, as you can see. They're going to deepen at the sides because they're a darker area as it kind of loops around. Okay, they kind of start following the shape of the head over here. Okay, so now I got to the head. I just feel that the head probably should be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to just do a slight revision here. Okay, I didn't really need that much. I just felt that pulling it out a little bit just helped the proportions. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the eye, and it's kind of on the upper middle, just slightly to the right. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace it. The reason I'm putting it in is because I have all this texturing around, and I want to make sure that I do have room for the eye. I'm just going to put a few lines under it. Okay, and we'll work on the detail of that in a little bit. So we do have these deep spots. So again, you don't have to do them completely sealed off. They can be just bunched up lines. And they are almost like, you know, like giraffe spots. They're going in different directions. We do have some of them kind of going down the left side of the neck. Okay, I just noticed this area is a little bit darker. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start working a little bit on this almost like band that goes around. So really what that is kind of the shell, kind of that outward curve that it has. So what I want to try to do with this is I kind of want to give it that feel that it's turned over. So I'm using my lines at a curve. And see, that's really going to help with the shape. You can see it's giving it like a feeling that it's curved. And then every so often you're going to get a little bit of a darker segment. Again, the slightly curved hatch. Okay, so over here, I'm getting into quite a dark area. So just for the purpose of showing the impact, I'm going to use a thicker Sharpie. I do think that working it in with the same ink, because the Sharpie has almost like a shine to it that I don't love. I mean, it's fine for practice, but I think if you really want it to look cohesive, you know, and really professional looking, I would use the same pen, or I would use just plain ink. Just like ink that goes in fountain pens, that should be fine. So I'm just going to put that in, and make sure when you do that, that you do it thoughtfully, and make sure that it's not sudden. You want it to kind of blend in and look like it belongs in that scene. You can go ahead and darken some of these. Okay, so you can see we're already getting contrast in here. Okay, so I'm going to continue with these. And it might be confusing. You might lose track of, okay, which band am I working on? There's one over, one under. Don't worry about that too much. Nobody's counting. And then the hatches are kind of getting a little bit more upright over here. And notice that as we get towards the left side, they're starting to kind of take the shape of this slant over here. So again, a lot of things that you do, how you shape your little areas will help enforce the shape that you are going for. So again, the hatches over here are kind of following that angle, that almost diagonal that's happening here. Okay, so we can go ahead and texture some of these ovals and circles that we did on the fins. And they're really just a simple hatch. So really throughout this whole drawing, there's really just squiggles and hatches. There isn't any cross hatching. There isn't any stippling. So it's a very simple technique. It doesn't mean that you can't add a few more things if you wanted to. And notice some of them are darker than others, and that will just help give it a little bit of movement. And of course, they're going to get darker where they meet something, or if they are sitting in a shaded area, like over here. Anytime you want to make it darker, you just make your lines a little bit closer together. Okay, so we'll do a few more over here. Notice in the smaller area, they're a little bit closer together, the lines, trying to give the impression of a groove. Looks like it's deeper on this side. And just spread them out as you go out. And just add a few more in here. And then up here, they're getting kind of closer together. So these over here are kind of facing us. The ones that are on the top, they're going away from you. So those ovals are getting closer together and they appear to be a little bit more shallow because they are going away in the distance. Okay, so I'm jumping from one area to the other to make sure that you get to see how each part is to be tackled. Okay, so how about we go to the eye, and I'm going to bring my camera a little bit closer so you can kind of see as close as I can get it. Okay. All right. So the very first thing I want to do is I'm going to break down that area. So again, I'm just making sure the shape is right. So I'm going a little bit before the eye starts. It does have some lines that, and I can see since I'm here that this can stand to be a little bit higher. Okay. And it kind of goes into those dark values over here. All right. So I'm going to break down the middle now. And I'm seeing this line over here. And so over here is kind of where we're seeing the darkest area. On the very far left, you're leaving that white. And that's kind of going to give that little twinkle, that little spark. I'm going really dark. And then we have some hatching. Okay, so you can already see that it's getting kind of the look, you know, it has the look in the eye. And the bottom is a little bit deeper. Okay. I'm going to just lift up this beak part a little bit. And it has a few lines kind of going underneath and a few lines going around. Okay, so let's zoom out. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so you can see when you look at it from a distance, that it does have the shine to it. So the key to doing eyes, whether it's animals, uh, sea creatures, people, is the breakdown of the eye. You want to make sure that there's one area that's very, very dark, and there's going to be one area that is going to be almost the white of the paper. That's going to give, so the contrast between those two areas, it's what's going to bring it to life. Now, to make a certain look or a certain direction of where the creature or the person is looking, that's when you play around with those two elements. And then you have all the tones that are in between. But basically, that's kind of what you would be doing. Okay, so let's have fun with some of these sea creatures and plants. So I'm going to work a little bit on these over here. And they seem to have like almost a cylindrical shape to them. So I'm starting with a little circle. And again, you know, I want them to look like they're in the water. I want them to still feel light. And they really don't have to have a lot of precision to them. They kind of, and also, you know, I'm just, you know, just taking, going, you know, outside the lines, and I'm just giving it some float away lines. I'm gonna go in here to these, anything I got when I the few sketches that I did beforehand, I kind of, you know, found myself going to the parts that were interesting to me. And I kind of like this one here, almost looks like a flower. It has the hatching in it. So really the key to making this area work is to kind of have different treatments on each one of the elements. So, you know, going over here, we have the hatches going this way on the space that's next to it. And not every area has to have an incredible amount of detail. I mean, this could just have the hatched lines going into another direction. There's that leafy part here that's kind of fun to work with. And it does kind of have some dark, thick areas peeking through. On the other side. So I started with just doing a few, and then I kind of let the dark areas kind of peek in. And see, with ink pen, I mean, it's so wonderful that you can get contrast achieved so quickly just by really darkening an area or keeping an area light. When you're working with, you know, a range like, you know, different tones of watercolor or colored pencil or even pencil itself, I mean, you're having to go through several steps to show that contrast. But with ink pen, it's a very quick process, and it just brings it to life. That's, you know, what I was telling you is that it just looks so impressive when it's done. Okay, so over here, you know, every area, just make sure that your hatching is going into a slightly different direction. Okay, I'm going to go to this thing that looks like a brain to me. And it just kind of has very organic flowing lines. Kind of once you work on an area, you know, just have the squiggles kind of follow each other. And again, it's not something that you have to have drawn all the way through. Okay. We can work a little bit more this one over here that almost has like a layered feel to it. Almost has tiers, like as in layers. Got this one. And again, see, I had these lines kind of curved like this. These lines are going to go straight. So I am getting a little bit of a different, you know, the next one, they're going into a slightly different slant. And there's a little bushy thing back here. And see, it's starting to come together. And you know, you can, I mean, you can totally improvise on this part. I mean, you can put in, you know, your own elements in here. I mean, you could even do something like, you know, just put in, you know, a little heart. You could put, you know, flowers. Just have fun with it. It's a fun piece. But the one thing, you know, I would just be mindful of is, you know, just keep the intensity of the work in the turtle itself and not in the stuff he's hauling, or she. And we can texture them a little bit, just lightly, if you want. Like the bubbles that are kind of going around. And even the bubbles you could have a little bit more fun with, just give them a little bit more texture. Okay, so this guy over here, for example, is like a very simple hatch. I'm gonna go back. And like this one over here, I'm just gonna give a slightly different texture to. So I'm going to put in just some small markings so that it looks different than the one next to it. You know, you can have them, you know, also overlap. Overlapping always looks very impressive in drawings. And you don't have to do every single item that is in here. I mean, you can just opt to do, you know, some texturing. Just going, and see, this will go a very long way just by doing hatching in different directions. Do have some. Okay. We have 10 minutes left, so I'd like to see what everyone is doing, and if you have any questions, you can unmute yourselves, or can you unmute them, Melissa, or do they?
Should be able to unmute themselves.
Can you unmute yourselves if you? So how did we do? Oh, hey,
I love
Lisa.
it.
I see. Oh wow, beautiful. Oh. Oh, nice. They're so different. That is so cool. Nuera, let me see yours. Very nice. Lucia, did you just do this in class? Can you unmute? Unmute. Okay.
Had it last night.
Okay.
So I was just like, it was very relaxing.
It is, isn't it relaxing?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, like you could do it like for a very, very long time.
Finish it here.
Yeah. To me, that's one of my, it's hard for me, I mean, to sit down and not do anything. So if I have to like watch TV or something, that's usually one of my go-to drawing things that I would do. Cause it's, you know, once you get to a certain point and you're just, you know, texturing, it can be a little bit mindless and it's clean. You just have that one ink pen.
You still need to figure out how to leave some things out. I mean, I just basically looked at the picture and kind of drew that, but you kind of subtract and add whatever you want, and I need to kind of do that.
Yeah, and Lucia, I think that comes with time, because it's kind of hard to know what you should include and what you should leave out. But what I was, you know, trying to show everyone is that, you know, you don't have to include everyone. I mean, this is an artist's vision and perception of something, of this subject, and they choose to put those specific elements. It doesn't mean that you have to put all of them, and you kind of have to see how they look together, because also the way we're going to draw each area is going to be so different from one person to the other. Carol, how did you do?
Oh.
Very nice, beautiful. Marlene, how did we do this time? I can't. Can you just? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. No. Good. Good. I think you drew too big. It's hard. It's hard to accomplish a lot. I mean, mine is. I don't know if you could really see, but mine is. Oops. Where am I? See, mine is small.
I have bigger paper.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, it's hard to cover. I mean, if you drew big, just know that it just is going to take time for it to build, because physically, I mean, you just can't work. We can't put that much within that amount of time. I mean, I would even draw like almost like postcard size for these within the class. Edith, how are you doing? Okay, looks good. Looks good. And let me see, anybody else? Does anyone have any questions, or are you feeling more? Oh, Melissa, yay! That looks great. I love it. That's awesome. Does anyone?
I did mine in pencil. I didn't have pen.
Oh, okay. We'll have to get you one. There's some in the closet if you physically go to the.
Okay, yeah, I'm at my mom's house, so.
Yeah, there's plenty there. That poor closet misses us.
Okay.
Yeah. So is everyone feeling more comfortable with the ink pen? Yeah, for the most part. Okay. Yeah, it comes practice. Just practice will make you just more, your lines will be just more immediate. They will be more spontaneous. You won't have to think about it that much. Like I love doing, you know, ink pen portraits, because they force you to just nail very specific things, and you have to be so careful with it. So what I wanted to tell you is next week, we're going to do ink pen, but we're also going to incorporate it with watercolor. So it's going to have a little bit of watercolor, and we're going to add the ink pen. So what I want you to do is, as soon as you get the email from Justin, which should be on Tuesday, I might have like just a little homework, 2 minutes literally, or you can do it in the beginning of the class. But I do want part of the watercolor area to be dry. So I'll be very specific about what to do. It's mostly going to be an ink drawing class, but I do want to include some of the watercolor because it's just really cool to combine the two. Yeah. Any questions at all about any of the techniques or any of the, you can also do different things with this. I mean, you could add some stippling, which is doing the dots. You could do some of the squiggles. There's a lot you could do with it. You could even add, a splash of watercolor to it. So make sure you send me your pictures. Let me see what they look like.